Okay, so today we are going to be finding out which is better, the RF01 or the Babolat Rafa Origin. So the first thing that we're going to judge these two rackets on is the style. So first up we have the Babolat Rafa Origin. Now this is quite a bold design from Babolat. It's gone with a lot of yellow, a lot of pink, which initially I thought was a little bit risque, but I've grown to like it, and I thought that it was a very interesting choice. I'm not sure that it's his most iconic paint job on his racket, but I kind of like it. I like how bold it is, and it's fun. Why not? You don't really see many colors like this on rackets. So the RF01. Now this racket boasts quite a sleek, classy design. It goes a lot more under the radar than the Babolat Rafa Origin, and there are a lot more subtle touches like that butt cap. Let's just speak about that for a minute. I heard that Wilson spent about 2 weeks debating whether to take the W off the bottom of the racket, which is something they're quite precious about. But I think that is an amazing touch, and for me this racket is probably one of the most iconic paint jobs that Federer has used. Yeah, I'm a massive fan, and I think this is the clear winner in the style department. Okay, time for the real work. Let's see how they perform. So first up was the Rafa Origin, weighing in at 317 grams with a 100 square inch head and a 16-19 string pattern. This thing is a spin and power monster. I'd say this racket goes far beyond anything that I've ever play tested on the power scale. Even just warming up in the boxes, I had to keep my hand really soft because I would just touch the ball and easily get effortless power. And it was actually so fun to play with. Just seeing how much spin I could generate, how hard I could hit the ball. And normally I like to play quite far up the court, but I was actually enjoying playing from the back with this racket, just because of how much height and spin I was able to generate, how much the ball was dipping on the other side. I even got feedback from my practice partner that that was probably the heaviest ball that I'd been hitting using the Babolat. Now this is probably due to the balance of the frame. It feels pretty head heavy, so the feeling that I'm getting from this racket that it will be really effective on a slower court, something where you have a little bit more time to wind up and use those big heavy strikes. Now because of the balance being pretty head heavy, I felt that it was a little bit more difficult to make those quick adjustments around the baseline. It was harder to get that control on things like half volleys, but again you just gain in other areas like generating power from further back, more height and more spin, etc. Now this is Rafael Nadal's racket of choice. And what I like most about this racket is they've embodied Nadal perfectly. Now we all know that Nadal, the king of clay, generates unbelievable spin, power, has that ferocious intensity. And I feel like this racket captures that. So the pros of this racket are effortless power, heavy spin, and so much fun to play with. The only thing that I think lets this racket down is just how much power it actually has. I feel at times it can be a little bit difficult to control. Now maybe that's just personal preference and I'm used to rackets with a little bit less power, but I felt like if I played with this racket for a week then I could get used to it and maybe strung it a little bit tighter as well. Saying that, it was a 55 pounds with RPM blast, so it wasn't really loose. So how did the Babolat perform at the net? Now I'll admit at first I did struggle to control the volleys a little bit with it being so head heavy, but after a while I was almost able to just let the volleys bounce off my racket. And because of the power, I kept my hand really soft, and playing at the net with this racket became quite a lot easier than I thought it would be. It really did surprise me. Now, especially with volleys not being the strongest part of my game, probably the area where I would be least comfortable, I thought the Babolat performed really well. To say that its strengths would predominantly lie with being behind the baseline. Now, if you're a player who likes to come to the net frequently, I would say that this probably isn't the racket for you. But again, I feel you could make it work.
The remnants of Ella's tennis lesson.
So it was time to test out the RF01. Now you'll have to forgive me for that hideous pink grip, but it was the remnants of a lesson with Ella, where she was trying it out and refused to play with it unless it had a pink grip. But anyway, let's get into the specs of this frame. So it's 320 grams in weight, so 3 grams heavier than the Babolat Rafa Origin, and it's a 98 square inch head with a 16-19 string pattern. Now straight away I can feel that the balance is different on this frame. It's head light, and it doesn't feel like there's as much weight as the Babolat behind the ball, even though this racket is heavier. So there was definitely more power and more spin on the Babolat. But hitting with the RF01, I felt like I had so much more control over the ball. And as you can probably see, the trajectory of the ball was just so different. I was able to hit through the court more, going flatter and straighter towards my target. Don't get me wrong, you can generate a lot of spin with this frame, but I felt far more comfortable hitting through the ball, hitting flatter, than with the Babolat. So this frame wins with control for me. The feedback that I got from my hitting partner when hitting with the RF was that I was able to take a little bit more time away. So I was pressuring him with time, and that's just because of the maneuverability of this racket. So I was able to go a little bit tighter to the baseline, be a little bit more precise with my targets, and be a little bit more direct. And for me, because this was a 98 square inch head compared to the Babolat, which was a 100 square inch head, the sweet spot was just a little bit smaller, but it felt more crisp. So I just had that little bit more feeling on the ball. Now, similar to the Babolat, with embodying Rafa, I really feel like Wilson have embodied Federer in this racket. Everything from the really classy design to how it allows you to play, and how it does feel like a natural evolution from the RF97, adapting all the great things about that racket so it fits into the modern game. So how did this racket feel at the net? Straight away I was way more comfortable with the RF1 than the Babolat. Obviously with it being head lighter, I had that little bit more control, and I felt like I could just be that little bit more accurate with the volleys. This racket did feel a lot more at home at the front of the court. So like the Babolat was really fun to play with from the back of the court, I was really enjoying volleying with the RF1. It was actually really fun to play with at the front of the court.
So the thing with this review is I'm doing it from a point of view of my game. So this is how I feel about the rackets. So I can already see that the RF1 is probably going to suit how I serve, but I'm really interested to see what this gives me extra. So let's give it a go. Yeah, so I'm not really trying to get too much power. I'm basically trying to loosen my hand off as much as possible to just see how much the racket can give me pretty much on its own. Not really aiming too much either to start.
Is that just your excuse for bad serving?
Probably. Yeah, that isn't an excuse for me just not being very accurate. So yeah, I'm going to see what it's like with a bit of spin. Yeah, takes the ball quite well, to be honest. Yeah, I know we're playing on Astro, so probably. Oh yeah, we'll cut that out. So far, I quite like this racket for serving with. It's not normally my style of racket, it's probably a bit too powerful. But yeah, if you want a little bit more power on your serve, I'd say that this is probably the racket to go to. I don't normally struggle too much with power. So yeah, we'll hit a few more and then see what the RF's got. Oh. It's quite nice. Yeah, it's pretty good. Performed pretty well on serve. Decent power, good amount of spin. The only thing that I feel that I probably need a little bit more of is just a little bit more control. So give the RF a go and see. So straight away, because of the almost lightness in the head, I would say, it's probably not a head-like racket, but because of the balance, it does really feel like you gain a lot of speed quite naturally. Oh, got my microphone showing. I'll show that. Trade secrets. So yeah, it does feel like it really does pop the ball, but again, it's not overly powerful. So I'm still getting that bit of control and stability. Feels really nice for serving, actually. Yeah, I feel like it really does pop. Look at that. The jump on that. Yeah, I really think that this is the clear winner on serve for me. Obviously my personal preference, but it just feels like I've got that control. Feels like I can really hit my spots with it. And also not struggle for pace. So for me, I feel like these rackets are really close in performance. They're probably my two favorite rackets of the year, but out of the two, I'd have to choose the RF01. I just feel like that added bit of control, versatility, and overall performance of the racket, I felt like was just that little bit better than the Babolat, which is a little bit more one-dimensional for power and spin. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video.